The voice speaks, and they listen, and the tiny fantasia gurgles embryonic magic. Bottled worlds, jugged juju, matchbox incantations, tethered tempests in a teacup for a little communal summoning, ever present, seldom acknowledged. But the voice speaks, and they listen. Then who's to say what's possible and what isn't? This is what's possible. Where the stars move across the abyssal sky like flies move across stagnant water, the great serpent glided through the towering black grass, iridescent scales of scarlet and golden flashing away in the whispering blades. Up it reared, unfolding itself higher and higher into a shimmering S-shaped titan, and the emeralds and the sapphires sloughed away from its underbelly, falling in twinkling cascades into the grass. The serpent hissed and flicked its tongue at the roving stars. It unfurled its midden hood, and the lights scattered and danced in 1,000 kaleidoscopic pinpricks. The scattered, uncut belly jewels squeezed and buried themselves into the thick, damp soil, where, with a flash and dull concussion, they took root and germinated, and opened themselves to seismic, ever-vertical inclinations. The ground groaned and creaked, the swollen soil rippled and pulsed, and up through the darkness climbed the faintly glowing blue and green banded trunks of mighty rough-barked trees. Their boughs and branches whipped outwards and thickened, glittering port-purple leaves of ever-moving, swirling patterns spread all the denser until the canopy overlapped and pulsed their meagre light. In the midst of this infant forest, the reared serpent oscillated from side to side and flickered its tongue against the treetops. It flared its midden hood, hissed again, and turned the reflected starlight across the canopy. Down on the ground, in the close and soupy atmosphere, where the blue and green and purple light swam together in slow and queasy tides between the trunks, the shadows fell in weird and lurid tempers. As shadow moved for light and light for shadow, the patterns in the rough and knotty bark seemed to bulge and animate woozily, as though at any moment something would step from out of the miasma. And in a moment something steps out of the miasma, leaving behind a smoothness in the bark, and assumed its unassuming corporeality. It was no more a thing than a little snail man, mottled yellow and brown, with bulbous shell and long prehensile eye stalks, upright on 2 thin stem-like legs, and possessed of 2 long, pole-like arms. In its spindly, knotty fingers it held a little hatchet, and without a further second's hesitation turned its blade in dull attentions to the tree that birthed it, and birthed more and more, who all in their turn took to hacking and chopping away the bark. In short order a mass of mollusk men were about their task, more and more, in steady succession, smudged into flickered reality. The forest floor was soon crammed with them, some hacking at the glowing wood, some moving and arranging the material along the line, others as a great team in turn massaged it against their sticky tummy mucus on every side, and passed the dripping bark onto yet another team, busily assembling and hammering some long and cylindrical shape. This seething swarm of snails thrummed and thrilled the forest with their busy industry, crowned by those who had climbed into the branches and snatched the great fistfuls of coloured light. Stuck belly flat to the bough, they spun the light out, the red from the purple, the yellow from the green, and threw it down to anticipatory gastropod comrades, who painted it upon the emerging body of a smaller, though no less great, serpent. The greater serpent, hood flared, peered coldly through the tree-tops, watching keenly the intrepid, slippery industry of the shell-bound swarm. So soon as their work had begun, the snail-men had finished, and stepped back from the constructed serpent into reverential, silent lines, as a more stately snail than had thus far been involved in any of the peculiar goings-on emerged from out the lugubrious shade. It carried a bottle of champagne in its crooked fingers. It raised the bottle in the air, declared some low and incomprehensibly gloopy words, and smashed it, in a spray of fizz and shards, across the little serpent's tail. Thousands of little snail-men as a single body broke out in rapturous staccato applause, a tiny, tinny roar across the midnight forest floor. And as they applauded, the little serpent stretched, raised its nose, and jerked uncertainly forward. And as they applauded, the forest dwindled, the trees faded, the snails thinned, the light dissolved. All momentary reality washed calmly and cleanly away, as the tide washes away a footprint on the beach. Only a faint echo of ghostly mollusk applause lingered on the night air, and then there was no more. The little serpent raised its head to the hissing titan above it, and flickered its freshly forged tongue to the hooded face, lowering inexorably towards its own. Forked tongues flashed, doll-like eyes peered at each other for an aching, breathless age. But then, there in the black grass beneath the wandering stars, scarlet snouts tenderly nuzzled, and bejewelled stomachs met the ground, and parent and infant glided away and ever onwards into the night. Somewhere where the stars move across the abyssal sky as flies move across stagnant water, and the black grass whispers insubstantial secrets. Something was made, and something occurred. But what, and how? The stars and serpents, the trees and snails, conjured across some plane we cannot accurately measure. This much can be said. All were summoned, and passed our way, and crossed again to that indelible globe of the surreally summoned and of lesser psychopomps. Gone for now, but here forever, because the voice spoke, and you listened.